Welcome to this memorial service. We'll be starting in just a couple of minutes. I'd like to introduce Gordon Ritchie, who is the co-director of our choir at the Unitarian Church of Edmonton. My name is Brian Kiley. I'm the minister there. And Gordon has a special song the family has requested called Blue Boat Home.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sails, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry seas, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all my kindred pilgrim soul, making the way with the light of the heavens and my beautiful boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hear the great winds urging me on. Breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sound, the sailor's song. I was born on the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
We've gathered together today to remember with love Jim McMillan, who has died. All living things must die, as we too will one day die. It makes us sad that this is so, but nothing lives forever. And so we light a candle to remember him, but this being a theater that has regulations about open flames, we're going to light a candle that's had a surgically replaced hip. The light will symbolize for us Jim's life as we think of how much we loved and appreciated him. Although our sadness is great, we also think of how glad we are that he lived. And we are thankful that those who knew him did so. He was a dedicated family man, son, brother, husband, father, and grandfather. He was a gifted surgeon who cared deeply about his patients, his staff, and his colleagues. He was a passionate, if eccentric, golfer, and blessed or perhaps cursed us all with his peculiar sense of humor. I introduced myself as Brian Kiley, and the family joke is that Jim would always say, "So how was that minister today, the Vietnamese minister, Kai Lee?" And as his final joke, I have him watching me through this service today. Jim touched thousands of lives, briefly or for long periods. He was loved, and he will be missed. I'd like to invite Dr. Paulus Paul to offer some remarks from the orthopedic community.
Thank you, Reverend Kiley. Good afternoon. Like many of us here today, I initially got to know Jim through work. First, as an orthopedic resident during my training years, and then as a surgeon colleague at the Misericordia Hospital. I know I speak for everyone in the orthopedic community when I say how much he will be missed, and I am honored to have this opportunity to share with you some of our memories of Jim. Like many orthopedic residents, my first interaction with Jim was in the operating room when we were both on call. He as the staff surgeon and me as his trainee. Regardless of how busy the day was, Jim's demeanor was always the same. Always smiling, always quick with a story, and always the model of efficiency in the operating room. As residents, this efficiency was encouraged in subtle ways. "All right, go ahead, Doc. Cut, cut, cut," he would say with urgency. And then, as though the thought had just occurred to him, "Here, I'll tell you what. You hold the knife, I'll move the leg." Jim treated residents very well. Some were rewarded with a bottle of wine waiting at the table of a dinner date after a particularly hard day in the operating room. I once did a very busy day of call on a Saturday with Jim, and at some point during the course of the day, I was lamenting about my inability to improve my score on the golf course. A few days later, I found a golf club in my locker, and I know I was not the only one who discovered a similar gift during their training. Mine was a 2-wood made by Jimmy. When I thanked him for it, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You'll enjoy it." The club, he said, had been acoustically enhanced. "What do you mean?" I asked. I was a golf neophyte at the time. "When the ball is struck," he explained, "the sound made by the club can only accurately be described as being somewhere between the sound of a raccoon belching and the sound of striking a cathedral bell with a wet coconut." He couldn't guarantee it would improve my score, but it would probably make me enjoy the round just a little more, and it did. Jim treated many friends and colleagues to rounds of golf at the Mayfair, where they were introduced to Jimmy's special method of golfing holes, not necessarily in the correct order. The numbering, Jim said, was more of a suggested guideline. The same was true of proper golf attire. Apparently, a collar sewn onto a mesh shirt still fit the guidelines. Jimmy took many young surgeons under his wing, offering advice on treatment of unique clinical problems and welcoming them into his office, smoothing the transition from trainee to attending surgeon. He was a wonderful role model and a wise man when dealing with matters of hospital and government administration, patient relations, and lawyers. He influenced many others, including nurses, physiotherapists, and students, by encouraging them to pursue their dreams and beyond. His advice was sound and welcome. His opinions were respected by his colleagues. He would quickly get to the heart of any question and summarize it succinctly with a combined wit and wisdom that are rare these days. Jim's skill in the operating room was legendary. It seemed that his operations were the perfect combination of efficient movement with a top-quality result. Even when there were cases that presented a significant challenge, Jim had a cheery disposition, a calm demeanor, and a way of summarizing these more difficult cases perfectly. He would use a metaphor or phrase such as, "Well, that was sort of like trying to nail Jell-O to the ceiling." Or, "It was good enough for government work, we weren't really pulling for overtime." Or my personal favorite, "The probability for success was low on that one." Jim's medical skill even transcended species. One of our medical colleagues had a cat that had fractured his leg. The injury was fixed with a pin, and after the leg had healed, the pin was protruding slightly and needed removal. Jim was asked if he would do it, and he gladly obliged. Well, word got out in the veterinary community that an orthopedic surgeon was going to extract the pin, and many arrived to pay homage and watch a true technician at work. Jim arrived, likely wearing a golf shirt, shorts, and his trademark golf sandals with no socks. How did he intend to proceed with the extraction, he was asked. Well, said Jim thoughtfully, seems to me you can either hold the cat and spin the nail, or hold the nail and spin the cat. There are too many stories like that to share today, too many practical jokes to relate, too many official memos from his alias, Dr. John J. Parbu Singh. In addition, there were daily acts of kindness like donuts and muffins in the nurses' or doctors' lounges. Each of these illustrates the fond memories that we have of this humble man who treated every day like it was a gift he was tearing open to reveal the riches inside. He would greet you with a smile, a twinkle in his eye, and perhaps that infamous arm wrestle handshake. When he spoke to you, you knew you had a friend for life. For Jim, the bucket was not just half full. It was overflowing with joy, advice, and good humor to bathe everyone around him. Those who worked with him will remember him with great affection. When all is said and done, however much we enjoy our jobs, it is the people that we meet who really matter, and colleagues like Jim will leave a lasting impression on us all. We will miss him dearly. Goodbye, Jimmy. You truly were one of the best.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. What a remarkable crowd. I mean, if you need to measure a tribute, there are over 500 people in this room and a good many more watching on the video screens downstairs. And I want to particularly thank those people who are watching the video screens and say that your reward is you get first crack at the food afterwards. Dr. James Floyd McMillan, Jim to everybody, is dead. That's a pretty shocking statement. In relative terms, he was not an old man, still enjoying his work and only just starting to ease in an only slightly less active retirement. He was looking forward with enthusiasm and with interest. There were still golf courses to be played. He was healthy, he was active. He wasn't ready to leave this life, and his death was a terrible, shocking surprise. As peaceful as it was, it has torn a hole in the lives of family particularly, but also friends. We can take a little comfort in knowing that he did not suffer the kind of debilitating illness he would have despised, but that is only a very little comfort today. Those of you who are left behind had no time to prepare, no time to say goodbye, no time to make sure things were right between you. It's very hard. In fact, it's kind of weird. And indeed, it has been a difficult and strange year for the McMillan family. So let us acknowledge some of what they have gone through, not just today. Jan's mother, Dorothy Hammer, died in May. Jim's aunt, Elsie Litzenberger, died in September. And then his mother, Erna McMillan, died in October. It has been a difficult year. You guys have had far too much grief. And it is a testament to the strength of this clan that you guys are even still standing. You're amazing. It is an amazing family that I am privileged to know and are you. So for the family and other close friends, in the days and weeks ahead, you're going to have to find the ways to say those unsaid goodbyes, publicly or privately, and get used to the idea that the Jim you knew and loved lives now only in your hearts and your memories. I've watched the intimate McMillan family come together over the past week, both physically and from very far distances, and emotionally as well. They have begun their grieving. There has been an awful lot of laughter through the tears, and tears behind the laughter. There have been lots of words and lots of hugs. You folks are doing this well so far. I truly admire the way you are grieving. You are doing it well, each as you are able to do it to your own degree, and that's good, and that is just the beginning of your process. When someone you love, or even someone you know a little bit, dies, there is a cost for them having lived, a price to pay for having let them touch your lives. And when the death is sudden, it takes time. First, just to get used to the absence, to the idea that Jim isn't there anymore, isn't going to be coming through that door, isn't going to be putting something in somebody's locker. There won't be any new quips, no new pranks, I don't think. No more text messages, no more holidays. And when you have the big family dinners and gatherings, someone else is going to have to manage the barbecue. We have to acknowledge his absence, his loss, the pain. And it's going to hurt. And it should. He deserves that. He loved his family, he loved his work, he went his extra mile for colleagues and co-workers and patients. Larger-than-life figures like Jim McMillan leave a big, empty space behind. So what's ahead in grieving his death? Well, there's sadness, of course. But at the same time, there'll likely be weird moments of anger that you can't explain. There will be laughter that also doesn't make sense. There will be times of confusion or even just numbness, or maybe filling the numbness with busyness. Emotions will burst out, sometimes at inappropriate times and inappropriate places, but this is absolutely normal. So when it happens, be gentle with yourselves and be gentle with one another. The only thing we can do is treat each other well and wait for everyone else to find their own way. I'd like to offer a prayer. Just please, as your wont, pray, meditate, reach out to the divine figure of your choice or to none at all. We lift our hearts in search of the inward resources we need to face life's varied experiences of joy and sorrow. At a time when one to whom we have been joined by ties of kinship and love has been taken by death, we seek the peace of acceptance. We give thanks for the enrichment that has been ours through shared experiences of friendship and understanding, our commitment to common causes and endeavors with the one whose loss we mourn today. May the words and feelings and remembrances we share this day strengthen us in our sympathy and support for one another, and renew our dedication to those underlying and eternal realities which alone give our lives meaning and worth. I'd like to invite Gordon Ritchie to offer a musical interlude.
and until we meet again, until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of His hand. May the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, the rain fall softly on your feet, and until we meet again, until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of His hand, and until we meet again, until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of His hand.
Amen. Thank you, Gordon. Jim's children, Kathy, Jill, and Dave, have prepared a eulogy and have asked Jim's friend Darcy Kipp to share it with us. I don't think I need those.
Good afternoon. It's my honor and privilege to share this eulogy that Jim's family so lovingly and thoughtfully prepared. Before I start, I'd like to let you know that recently, myself and several others had the pleasure of enjoying dinner with Jim in Las Vegas, in one of those fancy restaurants that he typically hated. We sat together and had what I would consider a very normal evening, while discussing in detail numerous golf courses that Jimmy had played recently, over his usual tonic water, salad, dressing on the side, of course, and a nice steak. He later outlined his next prank letter, whose target was a colleague who had just purchased a condo in Mexico. The letter would be from the condo board, citing some silly grievance, and was to be completely in Spanish. So his colleague would probably have to pay someone to interpret it. As I said, at least from my perspective, it was a pretty normal evening with Jim. Golf, sharing some laughs, and scheming his next prank. Jim was the backbone of a large, close family. Sunday dinner at the McMillans was like a reunion for other families. 15 or 20 people regularly gathered, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Jim loved getting people together. He had a very special relationship within this large family. Jan, his best friend, lover, soulmate, and golf partner. Jim had the privilege of working side by side with his sister Marilyn, and was very close friends with her. His 3 children each had a unique relationship with him and considered him a friend and father. Throughout their lives, they sought his advice when making decisions large and small. They will continue to ask themselves, what would Dad say when making life decisions? Jim held his kids to high standards and always supported them in any way he could. Whether they were traveling, furthering their education, needing a couch moved, or raking the lawn, Jim was there ready to help. He hugged them, kissed them, and told them he loved them all the time. After his daughters were born, there were only boys, nephews, grandnephews, and grandsons. Jim was in his element, spending time with what he called his troops. When he would come home and walk in the door, he'd say, "Where are my men?" Whether it had been hours or months, he greeted them all with the same gusto and enthusiasm. taking them swimming, wrestling with them, or going out fishing for the third time that day, Grandpa always was game. His response to his grandson's request was, "I can do anything." He cherished this time with his boys. Jim both figuratively and literally held his grandsons on his shoulders. Jim had high expectations for his tribe. He led by example and taught them hard work. But more importantly, he taught them that every person was worthy of respect. He broke through hierarchies and valued personal relationships. Wherever he was in the world, his response to the question, "Where are you from?" was Laklabish. His wife and children would cringe and jump in and say, "Canada, we're from Canada." Like everyone would know where Laklabish was. The lakefront cabin in Laklabish was the family Shangri-La. Barbecues, water skiing, fishing, sailing, they had it all. But Jim's favorite was a quiet canoe ride. He was always looking for someone to take for a canoe trip around the islands and along the shoreline near Mission Beach. Jim would never allow the passenger to paddle. Jim would say that he was, please forgive me, this is a quote, "shithouse lucky." For everything he had in his life. He said he was lucky to have been born into a loving family with wonderful parents, sister Marilyn and brother Al. It was luck that he raised 3 great children and 5 lovely grandsons. Jim was notorious for telling people that he was lucky to get to do what he loved. Although he thoroughly enjoyed his golf vacations, when he returned, he was eager to get back in the saddle, drive into Leduc in January, and see the first patient at 7 a.m. He was one of the hardest working people and never took credit even when credit was due. It was all just shithouse luck. Our thanks to Dr. Paul for talking about his medical career. Jim was humble and wouldn't want us to drone on about his professional accolades. When asked what he did for a living, he would often say he was in plastering and reconstruction. Occasionally that would backfire, and he would then have to spend 18 holes talking to someone about a basement renovation or a plastering project. The strange thing was that he knew enough about this stuff that could bluff his way through it. Jim engaged in lifelong learning, attending conferences and meetings around the globe. And that was where he was when he died, attending yet another conference. He even organized several sports medicine and trajectory study seminars at golf venues, as near as Radium and as far afield as Thailand. The education sessions, though somewhat brief, were presented by his colleagues who just happened to be golfers. He even wrangled CME credits at these events for a while. Jim was frugal with himself. That's an understatement. He drove a 20-year-old car and he stayed in modest lodgings, but he was always generous with others with his time, his possessions, and his treats from Costco on 149th Street. I'm sure those people will be feeling the loss of his passing as well. Jim volunteered his time to work in Africa on 2 different trips with orthopedics overseas. He and his buddy, Harvey Bird, went to Malawi in 1988 and then brought his family there as well in 1992. He worked there for a month at a time and was part of a teaching project. Jim felt that by teaching local doctors and students, he was contributing in a meaningful and long-term way. Before there were orthopods in their own communities, Jim made regular visits to Fort McMurray, Yellowknife, Hay River, and Fort Smith to treat patients. Jim loved every aspect of his work. As much as he enjoyed surgery, he actually loved seeing patients in the office and clinics as well. Long visits with his patients would often irritate staff who were trying to keep his busy clinic on time. Jim was always interested in learning more from his patients, which then gave him a broad base of knowledge about many topics. This allowed him to start with a few facts, which could then be easily embellished. Never stuck for an answer, who hasn't heard him say, Don't let the facts stand in the way of a good story. Jim has golfed 672 different golf courses in 19 countries. I know.